Hey, Chris,
Yeah, Fred.
what's a Mason?
That's a really good question, Fred.
You've reached the internet's home for all things Masonry. Join Chris and I as we plumb the depths of our ancient craft. From the common gavel to the trowel, nothing is off the table. So grab your tools and let's get to work. This is On the Level. Well, we are back. Hey, Chris, how's it going, man?
Good. I'm doing all right. There's a wave of the flu going through, but we're both here.
The
Must
flu?
be Superman.
I thought we cured the flu. Huh. All right.
Yeah,
Flu.
no, not cured. Half my office got taken out with it this week.
Well, there are worse things to be taken out from, so.
That's true.
I remember the flu. I've had it a few times, and, well, a
Back
couple days
when-
later, I get better.
Yeah. That's exactly what happens. Yes.
So, hey, I think we are on number 7. Where are we at here,
Six.
man?
This is episode 6.
Episode 6. I'm pretty happy with the way things are going here.
On the Level with Fred.
And Chris.
Uh-huh. Here we are.
I love it. Hey, and just a quick shout out to Jimmy C over at Sound Lounge for putting together our intros and outros, the music and the production to it. He is one of our sponsors, Sound Lounge Sarasota, and more on that later. I don't want to get too far in the weeds on sponsorship and stuff. I do want to get right into our topic for today, and that topic is, Chris?
Meet on the Level, which is very appropriate to our show.
It really is.
Meet on the Level.
And I think there must be a theme there going with Meet on the Level as our first topic of working tools. Something going on there.
Yes.
So,
There
so
could
start
be.
us off. Let's talk about the one of the working tools.
It is one of the
is the
working
level.
tools, yes. And I thought we'd start by talking about what Freemasonry tells us about this tool, the level. So the level is used, well, you're in this kind of industry, right? You actually use it as an operative Mason a little
as an
bit.
operative carpenter. That's correct.
You use a level. What is it used in your world? What do you use a level for?
Generally, it is to plumb and or level surfaces. Like most people complain when they buy a new house and they get a level and they put it on the wall and it's way out because nothing is plumb and or level. So a level in that I think in the context of Masonry, level speaks to the ground. So the horizontal.
The horizontal.
Being level, because one of the other working tools is the plumb, and that's a different show at a different
Vertical.
time. That would be vertical. So the level in this context is that flat ground.
Mm-hmm.
So anything being the bubble of a level being perfectly centered between those lines would be perfectly level.
Perfectly level, meaning perfectly horizontal to the ground.
Correct.
Meaning no ups and downs, no hills, perfectly straight and even.
Right. The word that comes to mind to me is true. When you true something with regard to it being level, you're truing it. So I'm thinking about a fireplace mantle. So that beautiful piece of wood that somebody made for over the fireplace, the mantle. I've made several of them and I've installed them, and that thing has to be perfectly level when you install it. Otherwise, it does not match the line of the ceiling and the line of the top of the fireplace, and it looks, no matter how beautiful it is, it looks terrible. Anyway, a little bit of a rabbit trail there.
So
On the level, Chris.
You need a working tool to make it perfect.
You need a working tool to make it perfect, correct.
Okay. So that makes sense, because what Freemasonry tells us is there's a few common phrases that we use in Freemasonry, like meet on the level or level ourselves with the fraternity, or something as esoteric as time could be a leveler of men. And so this working tool, I think, is meant to teach us a couple of things. It tells us that it's meant to keep us on the level with our brothers. And, I think that means that we humble ourselves from our outside world, our titles and our positions, whatever we may think we are in the world. We're all just brothers together in the fraternity. And so we've got to kind of shed our ego a little bit and make ourselves level with other people that, you may not even associate with if you had never met them through the fraternity, which is one of the great things I think about Freemasonry, is that we meet these people we would never come across in our lives, either because we think they're above us or below us, or you know how we act in the world, and we have these classes and stations. But in the fraternity, none of that exists. I don't know if it's true. We should research this before we say it, huh?
I'm taking a note as we speak.
But Rusty actually tells the story that Truman, when he was sitting president, walked out the White House. Back in those days, they could do that, and went several blocks down the street to attend his lodge meeting. And the worshipful master of that lodge was his gardener. And he sat and humbled himself as a brother and gave authority to his gardener as the sitting president of the United States. What a great example of leveling yourselves with a fraternity.
Right, yeah, and what a great example of a man of integrity. You know, in my opinion, Ike was definitely the last president, in my opinion, who, you know, doesn't matter what your political affiliation is, what your viewpoint is. He's just a man a man of integrity, a man of honesty, a man who was clearly on the level.
Mm-hmm.
See what I did there?
Yeah, beautiful tie-in.
So, you know, the phrase in lodge, and I can't give anything away here, and I never would, but, you know, the question is always asked, you know, how do we meet? You know, how do we meet each other? And the answer is always we meet each other on the level. And to me, it's, you know, we meet each other in truth. And like you said, in humility. I'm not trying to sell my brother on a false bravado of who I think I am or might be. I'm trying to reveal myself and all my flaws whenever I go into the lodge. And I try to do that in life in general. There are times when you have to be guarded in this world, obviously. You can't wear, you know, your entire life on your sleeve. That would not be wise. But when I'm in lodge, I try to be, you know, as humble and honest. I try to be the truest version of Fred as I possibly can be within the lodge. And it's caused me a little trouble here and there along the way, but I've learned a lot from it.
Right.
But that's, to me, for the first part of this statement, meet on the level. That's what it means to me. So when I come into lodge, you know, I'm reminded immediately that I'm to take down those defenses, take down the falsehoods, and just be the truest of me that I can be to my brothers and see where it takes me.
Right. That's a really good way to look at it, I think. And it's very Masonic. I think it cuts right to the heart of what Masonry is supposed to be about.
I agree.
But when we meet people as Masons, we're supposed to treat them as equals. That's really what it means when you meet someone on the level. Since the level's used to make things perfectly even, we meet perfectly even on the level. And that's how we should treat everyone we meet, as if we're all equals.
Right. Getting back to the Eisenhower analogy, that he was equal to his gardener, even though he was the president of the United States, sitting in lodge under the worshipful master who was his gardener. They were on the level.
Can you imagine? That would be awesome.
I think that's awesome. Yeah, that's really awesome.
Great example of Masonic principles in action from a sitting president. Just would have been incredible to sit in that lodge, I think, and see it.
Yeah. Now, the other idea behind the level is traveling that level of time. And, you know, talk a little bit about that. What's that all about?
Well, if you think, and this is another big picture Masonic principle, I think that gets really misunderstood by the general public, because we have a lot of symbols and references to death in Freemasonry. The third degree in particular is very focused on the idea of death and its importance to us as humans. And I don't know what is a better leveler of humankind and mankind than the idea that we are all going to die. Some of us sooner than later, but none of us are getting off of this planet alive. And so therefore, the symbol of the level and the idea of death can be very closely tied together, because death kind of strips away all of our ego our problems, our differences. And I think death is the thing that ties us to religion very closely for most people. Their ideas about death and what happens and how your life will affect what happens in your death. And so I think there can be a very close tie between all the great religions of the world and the idea and the concept of death and the Masonic idea that we're all equals traveling upon this equal level of time, because it doesn't matter what we do. In the end, we're all going to die.
Correct.
And that levels us in some way. It kind of strips away your differences and egos and makes us realize we're so much more similar than we want to admit we are. So I took a couple of minutes to Google this and found I took 3 or 4 of the major religions and looked at them for ideas they have about equality and basically meeting on the level. And so I found in Proverbs 22:2, the rich and poor meet together. The Lord is the maker of them all. Sounds like he's talking about equality here. Wealth and poverty each have their risk. The rich should not despise the poor. The poor should not envy the rich. Another Proverbs.
Right. Yeah. The writings of Solomon.
Is that Solomon?
That's Solomon, yeah. All the Proverbs were written by, most of the Proverbs were written by King Solomon. That's correct.
Beautiful.
Yeah.
And Solomon is a very prominent figure in the Masonic traditions and stories.
Correct, yeah.
And all of the lessons, particularly, again, the Master Mason degree. So in the Quran states that all humans are descendants of one man, Adam, and are therefore brothers to one another. The emphasis on equality and justice in the Quran appears throughout the text and even includes one's enemies. That's news to me.
No, it's true. Very true.
And then you've got a fundamental Jewish principle is the equality and unity of humanity. We all have one creator, one God is the divine parent of every person. And so all of these major religions of the world are kind of talking about the same message, right? That we should treat ourselves as equals, regardless of our station, regardless of our wealth, regardless of our beliefs. And that even ties into an Indian. I found a quote from the White Elk tribe leader who said, "Treat all men alike. Give them all the same law. Give all an even chance to live and grow. All men were made by the same Great Spirit Chief. They are all brothers. The earth is a mother of all people, and all people should have equal rights upon it." So that's 4 now religions around the world that all talk about our Creator making us equal. It doesn't talk about us being better than anybody because of our beliefs or our wealth. In fact, most of them say that wealth is not a good thing, right, or something to be,
the
sought
pursuit
after.
of it or the love of it is the basis of all evil. That's right.
Yes.
Of all kinds of evil, I should say correctly.
And I think that's another misconception about Masonry, is that we're out to take over the world and become super uber rich guys.
Yeah, right. Yeah.
Which is also a misconception, because Freemasonry, it teaches nothing and says nothing about wealth being a good thing.
Yeah, and we probably have to be really, really organized to take over the world. So don't worry, guys. We're not taking over the world.
So now that you've seen some stated meetings and you've seen some lodges, you feel pretty confident in saying that to the listeners?
I do. Yeah, we're not taking over the world. Hopefully, we're taking over our own passions and becoming better people. But I want to go back to the religion. I think as you were talking about, that all religions or all men or mankind has this similar understanding. Like the Indian things talked about law, give them the same law, the rich, the poor,
right,
the old under the same law. And that, to me, that gets back to just this universal truth that all of us are going to die. This life is not permanent. And we stand on the precipice of eternity. Regardless of what you may understand that to be, we all have a date with that inevitable end. It's that saying, memento mori. Remember, you have to die.
Yeah.
Live your life in such a way where you're going to die. Make sure that the days that you live matter. And what does that mean? Well, it comes back to what was said right there in the law, and the same thing with the writings of Solomon in Proverbs. It all comes down to there's a standard of living that we should aspire to, and the main thrust of that standard is to do unto others as you would have them do unto you. Live on the level. That's the ultimate statement in my mind of living on the level. I don't want to if I treat somebody in a way that I would not want to be treated, I am the ultimate hypocrite.
Right.
I am the biggest hypocrite of all, man, because that is just absolutely outrageous. So if I'm a wealthy person who goes around treating people who are less fortunate than I am in a super negative way, then all of my wealth, all of my acclaim, everything that I've worked for is useless and worthless. And one day I'm going to die just like those poor people that I abuse every day. And we will be, universal fact, universal truth, we will be eventually on the level, all of us. It doesn't matter who you are or what you have. Bill Gates, all the way down to the homeless guy that, was trying to wash my window the other day. All of us will be reduced down to that final truth. We will all be on the level.
Yeah, the power of that's the power of death, and I think it's why it's such a prominent part of the fraternity, and also one of the things that's so easy for the public to misunderstand. We have the symbol of the skull and crossbones. We have the symbol of the coffin. These are all, a spade, which is used to dig a grave.
Right.
These are all symbols in Masonry, and people can look at that and say, look at these evil people thinking about death, talking about death.
It's unbelievable that how misconstrued the skull in our fraternity has been. I have family members who the skull, the coffin, the cross, all of the bones, they immediately equate the entire thing that we're some sort of Halloween cult.
Yes.
In dark rooms doing bad things. And it's just like, no, we're recognizing death.
Yeah.
And I'm sorry, brothers and sisters, but if you're not recognizing death, then you're not really dealing with reality.
Yes. Agree with you 100%. Even the symbol of the coffin, something so obvious that everybody knows what it is and what it's used for, became a negative thing to the outside world and looking at us. In our lodge, we used to use a prop that was a coffin in the third degree.
Okay.
And somebody outside the fraternity saw it. Had nothing to do with our lodge in particular, but this happened somewhere in Florida, and was offended that there was a coffin being used because they felt that this was a bad look to the outside world that we used a coffin in any kind of a ritual. And so the Grand Lodge decided it was abolished and banned, and we can no longer use that symbol, which has been part of our ritual for hundreds of years, because it offended some outside people looking in, or there was a fear that it would. And I think what a horrible way to operate from a place of fear.
Yeah, and also, my thing, and I've said this before on other podcasts, any organization that changes its charter, itself, that gives up on things like using a coffin in a ceremony because of outside pressure is in danger of losing everything.
Yeah.
Because once you start to look at the Boy Scouts of America, and however you feel about them, good, bad, or indifferent, they gave up some of their principles that they had early on, and today the Boy Scouts of America is basically bankrupt. They're gone, and they chipped away, and they gave into social pressure and more and more social pressure till they're nothing now. They're gone. And that's just one example. And again, I am not advocating or denying anything about the Boy Scouts of America. Both of my sons, when they were young, they were Cub Scouts. We went through that together. But anyway, regardless, once an organization begins to cave to outside pressure, they're in danger.
Yeah.
I would be the guy that would bring a coffin back into the lodge, and then send some sort of video proof of it up to the higher ups just to let them know, yeah, down here we're not caving. So come on down and yell at us if you want. Anyway,
it's not even the first time. We had a tradition before the initiation, where we would put a candidate in a dark room, and it would have a skull and crossbones right in front of a mirror, and we'd make them sit there for 20, 30 minutes and make their own conclusions about what they should be thinking about. But how can you look at a dead man and then look at yourself and not make the connection?
Right.
That this is where I'm
that.
headed. And that puts them in a mental state where they're really prepared for that third degree, which is a lot of content about the idea of death and dying. And that also apparently scared some people, or looked too satanic to some people. And so it's no longer allowed to be used as part of our ritual. We cannot have a chamber of reflection.
Well, chamber of reflection.
Yes.
How awesome would that be? I love it. We have to revive that. But here's the thing: here in America, we don't die in America. We pass on. You know, we don't die. We don't talk about death. Death is not the way it was supposed to be. Death is a negative thing. It's a bad thing. Yes, it's a part of life. Everyone dies, but that doesn't make it a happy occasion. Something's wrong. Just watch a video of a tribe of lions taking down a gazelle. If they don't do that, they'll die and starve to death. But look at the scene in front of you. If you don't come away thinking to yourself, something is very wrong here, death and the life from death and the pain, the suffering, and all of that, something's wrong. Death is not the way it should be, but it's the reality. And in Masonry, we face it.
Yes.
We face that reality on the level. We look at death.
Yes.
What is that? What do you call that? The reflection?
The chamber of reflection.
The chamber of reflection. I feel like I need to set up a chamber of reflection in my house so that every morning I can take a couple of minutes and view that skull. You know, I have a picture in my mind of the skulls on a table and the mirrors behind
and
it.
Some lighting on, so this is all you can see.
All you can see.
Oh, dark room,
brother.
just the skull and you, and that's all you got.
Yeah, I think I want to put that together and put it on our Instagram so guys can see kind of the vision of what we're talking about there. That the chamber of reflection. Anyway, I'm on a rabbit trail here. We'll save that for another podcast.
But yeah, that's the Masonic way of reminding us, hey, get your head out of the clouds, get down here, think about what you're doing. Your time is limited. Spend it wisely. And what should you be doing with your time?
Right.
Well, Freemasonry tells us we should be working hard. We should be helping our community and our brothers, our family, anybody whose lives we can touch. That is the most valuable thing we can do with our time, is help another person.
Yeah, that's right. Mindfully thinking about our lives and the impact that we're supposed to be making to make this world a better place. I mean, that's Masonic, baby.
What a great segue you said that, to make this world a better place. So I'm going to read a quote from a former Secretary General of the United Nations and tell me if this guy doesn't sound like a Freemason to you.
All right.
People of different religions and cultures live side by side in almost every part of the world. And most of us have overlapping identities, which unite us with very different groups. We can love what we are without hating what and who we are not. We can thrive in our own tradition, even as we learn from others and come to respect their teachings. That's a pretty Masonic statement, I'd say. That's in line with our beliefs about the world and really the driving force of Freemasonry, which is to unite people of different races, cultures, creeds, stations in life.
Political parties and affiliations.
Even people that like different sports teams.
Right, yeah. and I like that statement, you know, and it's true. I find myself, I think we've done great harm to ourselves intellectually by this, you know, never talk about politics or religion. I would say never argue or fight about politics or religion. Never try to force somebody to adopt your point of view who didn't ask for it. That's the wrong way to go. But I have had great conversations with Mormons, with people from Islam.
How else will you learn?
I know.
If you don't communicate about it.
And how
you can't learn.
It's so true. It's so true. But, you know, I think we did a podcast on
one of our early ones.
One of our earlier one was talking about conflict between brothers, I believe.
Difficult topics of conversation also was
Right.
our very first podcast.
That's right. Yeah. And talking about, but at the end of the day, Masonry is not a religion, and we're not a political party or a religion. However, we are made up of people from different religions and political parties, and everyone should be encouraged to know what they believe and what they hold to, and be able to articulate that to another brother with gentleness and respect and in the proper time and context. We're grown-ups. We're not children. We don't need the thought police to tell us how to behave. We're supposed to help each other and encourage each other to behave out of the best interest for the person in front of us. And hopefully that happens more than it doesn't.
So we're old men, you and I.
Some of us are older than others, Chris, but yes, go on.
And we know those things about ourselves. I know who I am. I know who I'm not.
Right.
I know who I want to be. But I see a lot of young people coming into the fraternity, and they don't know who they are. And they know where they want to go, but they really don't know how to get there.
Yeah, it's so true.
And they're like trying to figure it out. And so what a great place for people to come without any kind of social stigma. Well, I guess there is some social stigma attached to being a Mason. In some groups, that would be looked at as a bad thing. But in reality, if you spent any time in a lodge or around Masons, you'd see that it is all about trying to figure out or give you the tools to figure out who you are and how to actually be the person that you want to be and how to actually get where you want to go. So even if they're not where we're at, it's about helping them get there in kind of a safe, really with a lot of love and affection and understanding, help them find their own way without ramming anything down their throat. Like you said, we're not the thought police.
We're not thought police.
But here, let's talk about stuff. You can overhear us talking about things, and maybe you'll figure it out for yourself. You will figure it out for yourself.
Yeah, that's right. That's right. And not showing. I'm thinking about a brother who came in he said he just came in. He's an EA, and he said to me, he's looking for some direction in life. He'd gone through a really bad relationship that blew up on him, and a long-term relationship, and now he's here living with his mom, and has got a good job and is rebuilding his life, but had no focus, no direction. And he found Freemasonry in his search for other men who are doing it right, where he can learn from. And for a lot of guys coming in, I just think this country is ripe for a fraternity of men who are just a little bit further ahead than the guy below them, and is willing to share with them their life experiences, and bring them along. Yeah. This is the epitome of on the level, man. This is exactly what we're talking about here. Is that the guy who's a successful lawyer and has millions of dollars, who's a dear brother in the lodge, and who knows Masonry, can take a guy like a kid like this coming in and mentor him and help him and share with him his life experiences as equals, as complete equals. An EA to a multi-degreed, long-term, brother Mason, who sit down next to each other and have a cup of coffee and talk on the level, man.
Yeah.
And that's really, I think that's one of the most powerful. It is one of the most powerful aspects of Freemasonry, and I'm starting to see, and I'm going to do what I can to change this, one of the most neglected ideas. I see a lot of social stuff going on, which is great. We're social animals. We want to hang out. We want to go grab cigars and whiskeys and have some fun and do all that stuff. But there is some serious business to do, and we must not forget that sitting in the lodge having dinner across from a brother, who's asking questions. If you understand, and you're a little bit further ahead or even equal to that person, you need to share with that person,
right,
and help that person to understand what it is we're trying to do here. And what we're trying to do here is we're trying to make us good men better men, that we might impact the world. Yes.
I was on an investigating committee last year or 2 years ago, and I saw this in action. The guy was coming from another lodge out of town. I won't say his name, but he was the CEO of McDonald's for many years.
Wow.
And owns a NASCAR team now. And I see him on Fox Business being interviewed all the time. And this isn't about me, but I was on this interview, and one of the guys interviewing him from the lodge was a 27-year-old kid that didn't have a job that lived with his mom.
Wow.
He's interviewing that guy.
Right.
I was sitting there just thinking about this situation. And where else in the world are you going to see anything remotely like that? And the guy had the utmost respect for the kid, because he's a member of the lodge.
Right.
And he's his gateway to getting into the lodge. And so he wanted to impress him. But I'll tell you, the guy wound up turning the tables, and he was interviewing us. He had us under control in minutes.
Yeah, there's a reason why he's where he's at, right?
That mentally just way more nimble and swift than the three of us were. I'd never seen anything like it. The guy interviewed us. We didn't interview him. But that situation reminds me how Masons are supposed to meet, which is on the level.
On the level, yeah. So let me ask you a question then. What does on the level mean to you? Because I have a very specific way of looking at it for me. All of the working tools, we interpret them based on how we perceive them, guided by the principles and laws of Masonry. So we can look at those working tools, and my interpretation of how it applies to my life could be a little bit different than yours.
Should be
a little bit different. There are obvious. The analogy is a level, so you can't treat it like a plumb. But so tell me a little bit about what for you in your life on the level is, and I'll tell you how I kind of look at it.
Yeah, I think first and foremost to me, it's about being humble, and always trying to humble yourself. I might even go too far with this sometimes in my effort to be humble, because I just can't be satisfied sometimes with myself. And I will have a conversation at a lodge meeting, for example, and on the way home be beating myself up because, man, I should have kept my mouth shut. I had no business saying that. So I'm always trying to correct myself in any interactions I have with people, and always be thinking about I need to be on the level with everybody, not just in the lodge, but outside the lodge. So I own a company, and I have employees, and I try very hard when I interact with them to put them in a situation where they feel like we're just friends or we're just coworkers, that I'm not a superior and you're a subordinate. Sure, that has to happen sometimes, right? Occasionally, because you have to do your duty.
Sure.
But on the whole, I prefer to try to be on the level with everyone I can possibly be, and that if I see an old person sitting alone, I think about how lonely they must be. I like to sit and talk to them, drum up a conversation. I'm not a young person, above them. Let's sit down like two people. You look lonely. I have a second, and have a conversation. And I think those are the kinds of lessons that Freemasonry can teach us to use more in our lives, in the real world, about making ourselves more equal with the people that we have interactions with. Now, the other thing I'll say, because I find myself using this a lot, when I have conversations that I want to keep private, I find myself always saying, if it's a Mason, hey, this is conversations on the level, right? And so I don't know that that's an official Masonic thing, but for me, you ask me how I think about it, and aside from keeping myself humble, that's the other way I find myself using it in my life a lot, is by when I want to have a really intense private conversation, I'll say, hey, this is on the level, and I want you to understand it's on the level before we have it.
And the brother hearing that knows that this is not for public information. This is between you and I.
Which I don't know that that's an official Masonic thing,
but I've heard it before.
Definitely the way I use it.
I've heard it used before as well. Yeah, and I would immediately know exactly what you're saying when you say that. For me, working tool when I got into Masonry, I've been in construction since I was 16 years old. I'm going to turn 60 in about 30 days. And I've literally, I've been through a lot of things in my life. I've done a lot of marketing. I've done lots and lots of sales. But the basis of my income that I have done throughout my life has been construction. So when they told me about working tools, I was like, whoa, working tools, man. I know a little bit about that. I used to be a bit of a tool whore, which means I would buy more tools than I need because they're shiny and cool. And my wife would go nuts because they're expensive. But anyway, so I kind of took an approach to all of the working tools and kind of applied to them what they mean to me in a very direct and generic sense. And from there, I like to expound on it. And let me just share, if I can, the list, and then we'll go back to the level. Okay, so for me, the 24-inch gauge is my time in my life. The common gavel is a willingness to learn and work on myself. The plum is the standard that I set. The square is the standard that I apply, or that standard applied to my life. The level is the path I walk. And then, of course, the trowel is doing the work, all of the work. Going back to all the tools and doing all of the work, that's the trowel. And then, of course, the compass would be understanding why I do what I do with all of the tools. So the level being the path I walk.
What do you mean by that? The path that you walk?
Well, we're all walking the same path ultimately. So the path I walk while applying the tools of Masonry to my life is that it's that path that leads to light. And, of course, that means truth, right? There are truths, right? Gravity is a truth that you can't get away from, right? So kind of the same idea. There are certain truths in this world that no matter how much society wants to tell you that, your truth is your truth, murder is always wrong, and it's always going to be wrong.
Right.
So there are truths out there. So the path that I walk is that level of time, heading to that ultimate destiny that we're all heading to. We talked about this earlier in this podcast. It is the ultimate leveler of all things to all men. It doesn't matter who you are or where you are. When I see the homeless guy on the street, I know that he is on the same level of time and path that I am. He's probably not making choices that are optimal for his life. Now, that's probably why he's homeless. I'm making better choices than he is, but it doesn't matter in that context, because at the end of time, at the end of his life and at the end of my life, we're both going to stand in the same exact spot and have to look back. So that's for me, the level is a very stark, very strong reminder that ultimately, memento mori, ultimately this is going to come to an end. And how am I going to use those working tools, all of them, in my life to better the people around me? And as a Christian, it's just to me, for me in my life as a Christian, it's just tenfold. It tenfolds the whole thing for me. It puts all of that in such perspective, of that level. I can just see it. I see a cartoon picture of me walking on this drawn line. This straight drawn line, and I'm walking towards, the light, and then there's another line with another person, and another, and another, and another, and another, and all these different lines going towards this ultimate place that we're all on. Some lines are better than others. Some people have been given, easy paths, easy being relative to who they are and where they are. Some people very difficult paths. We live in America, so our paths, generally speaking, we are kings and queens on the world scene. Try India, pal. If you think you got it hard, give India a shot. It's a tough place to live. There's 1 billion people starving over there. So but all of those people and us and everybody else, it doesn't matter who you are. Like I said, Klaus Schwab, all the way down to the starving 5-year-old who has no mother and father in Africa that they don't know what to do with. All of us will end up on that end. Live accordingly. Live accordingly. So that's what the level is, that path I walk, carrying my tools and using my tools in a way that would benefit myself and those around me.
Beautiful. And I think that's a goal we should all have. And you look back in history at the people that are most remembered through time, not even just in our country, but these people happen to be from our country that I'm talking about. And you think about the people that created this nation we live in.
Yeah,
mostly
right.
Masons.
Mostly Masons.
People that are looking to expand or create a nation based upon their core philosophy, which is equality, democracy, and the freedom of thought and conversation. And how did they start this country? We hold these truths to be self-evident, that all men are created equal.
That's right.
It's right there in the founding of our Constitution, those Masonic principles. And the more you dig into our nation and how it was created, the more you see how much Freemasonry really influenced this place in its beginnings.
Just absolutely true. You know, that I just love that opening statement. We hold these truths to be self-evident, that all men are created equal. In other words, the equality of every man is obvious to all. That's the translation. Equality is obvious. Even the deniers of it, when they put their head down on the pillow at night, they must know. Or when they go to the bathroom, hello, I don't care who you are, and I don't care if you got a golden toilet. At the end of the day, all men, women, men, all mankind are created equal. There is no advantage from a birthplace. There is no advantage. All of us are equal and endowed by certain rights, and it goes on and on.
Sure,
what a wonderful document. Had to be written by Masons.
Yeah, absolutely. You read it as a Mason, and you just know.
You just know, man.
If I was in their position, I would do the same thing.
Yeah.
If I was in that time, in that place, I would sure as hell try to do the same thing.
Right. Yeah. Well, they saw their lives, which they were living on the level, being destroyed by an outside power, a power that did not want them to be individuals free to love, care, and help their neighbor. It was a centralized force coming in to say, no, we are the ones. We're the ones who are going to dictate to you what is right and wrong. And they were like, oh, no, you're not. No, you're not.
But there's, we talk about how to apply these things to our lives. Look at how other men have applied this to their lives. Look at what they've achieved and accomplished for humanity just by trying to live the Masonic principles that they were taught in whatever capacity they could. And I think that should empower us to bring it into our lives. If other men can do it, you can do it.
Yeah.
Okay, maybe you're not Thomas Jefferson, but maybe you're not. But you can definitely aspire to be more like that in your life. And, and whatever influence you have over other people to try to spread that philosophy with them, that we're all equal. And that is what meeting on the level means to us as Masons.
Right. I don't know why I thought about this, but for some reason, and I'm doing some study on this, and I will bring it eventually to a podcast. But the Hoover Dam was conceived. Now, if you have information on this, please email me if I'm wrong or right or just plain crazy. Email me. But from what I understand, the Hoover Dam was conceived, designed, and built by Masons. And if you go to the Hoover Dam, you will see tons and tons of Masonic symbolism. It's everywhere.
Really?
Oh yeah, it's big time. They actually have a display, and I think there's a little museum thing in there, and you can go in there, and it talks about Freemasonry. And there is a compass in marble off to the side. It's been there for many years with a kind of a recording that talks about Freemasonry. It's the coolest thing ever, man. But going back to just great achievements, and we don't really understand. If you ever been to the Hoover Dam, you're like, dang, that thing's huge. But we don't really understand the technological marvel in that period of time that it is. And we don't really understand what it took to build that thing and to conceive it and to the vision of the future, to create Lake Powell the way they did, even though it's in a drought situation right now, which is kind of a different story. But anyways, these great achievements throughout our history are done by men who live their life on the level.
I love that, and we're going to be talking in the future about this subject in particular, the Knights Templar and Freemasonry.
Okay.
But, you're talking about Masons building the Hoover Dam. We're talking about Masons building a nation. The Templars built some of the world's most beautiful Gothic temples.
Right. Yeah, that's true.
That, to this day, we still have ever seen. So, think about those builders that were part of that organization and what they built at that time, and try to tell me that Masons aren't linked in some way through the Knights Templar, because I want to have that conversation soon. And that's going to tie into what we're talking about right now, the construction of those Gothic temples and the skill that's unmatched even hundreds of years later.
Right.
How did they do it? And how did they have such, talented craftsmen as part of this military organization that was run by the state, which is controlled by the church? Well,
there you have it, guys. Stay tuned for future podcasts. So, hey, that was great conversation, Chris. I think there's some takeaways to this topic, meeting on the level. And if you have a takeaway, if you have comments or insights that you'd like to share, please email us and send us your comments. Leave us a 5-star rating, of course, on Apple Podcasts, please, and smash that like button. Wait, isn't that a different platform? I don't know. There's so many platforms.
Got to be able to like this somewhere.
Whatever platform you are listening on, we want you to know we appreciate you, and we appreciate you staying to the end to this conversation. This is our 6th podcast. Look for the 7th. Go back to the 4th. Check out the 1st. Again, we just really appreciate you guys hanging out with us. And Chris, anything you want to say on the way out, man?
Yeah, I had one thought, and I wanted to mention it. You had said something earlier about we're never going to take over the world. When you get into the fraternity, you see it's not going to be the case.
Right.
But I had a thought that although I agree with you, we're not organized well enough to take over the world. That's because it's not our purpose. I think that one of the things that I'm really happy that I joined the fraternity, because I've realized if anything was to ever happen, some kind of nuclear war or something that on that level, and the governments went away, this loosely connected fraternity could be the structure that could continue to hold us together.
I agree with that.
We have it all here, right? The moral law, the law of man, the respect for each other, the caring for each other. A
system of justice.
And we can still operate, independently as cells. I think it's a great system for the future if anything was to ever happen, and that gives me some comfort.
I love it. Great point to end on. All right, guys. We'll see you on the next one, number 7. Look for it on your Apple Podcast. Chris, had a great time.
Thanks, Fred.
See you, brother.